Hello there, Homeschool Nolan here to help you navigate learning in the digital age. This past Veterans Day weekend, I attended a ceremony aboard the USS Hornet out in Alameda, California, commemorating the 80th anniversary of the Flying Tigers. And today, I'd like to share why the Flying Tigers must never be forgotten. For those of you who aren't familiar, the Flying Tigers were a group of American fighter pilots who went to China 80 years ago to help defend China against the Japanese invading their country in World War II. For 7 months in 1941 and 42, these brave Americans, along with their Chinese allies, joined forces to stave off the Japanese army as it was ravaging its way through China. It was a chapter in history in which Chinese and Americans worked together as one for a great cause with genuine affection and appreciation for each other. And judging by the ceremony I attended last weekend, which featured both American and Chinese speakers, it still offers hope to this day that the people of China and the United States have and always will be friends. Now, I never really learned about the Flying Tigers in school. I used to think of the Flying Tigers as just a cargo airline, which it really was, founded by former Flying Tiger pilots. But the real story of the original Flying Tigers is far more epic and must never be forgotten. The story of the real Flying Tigers begins in 1937. Japan has invaded China. The Republic of China, as it was known then, was led by Kai-Shek, and he knew that his Air Force was no match for the Japanese Air Force that was relentlessly bombing cities all across China. So Chiang sent one of his Air Force colonels to the United States to recruit someone who could help train and build the Chinese Air Force. They found their man in a retired Army Air Corps officer named Chennault. This southerner from the backwoods of Louisiana would end up dedicating the next 8 years of his life to defending China. Chennault first arrived in China in May of 1937. Upon arriving, he met Chiang Kai-shek's wife, Sung Mei-ling, who, unlike Chiang Kai-shek, spoke perfect English. It was through Madame Chiang Kai-shek that Chennault was able to work with Chiang Kai-shek to build the Chinese Air Force. But by 1940, the situation in China had gotten worse. Japan, by then, had captured all of China's major coastal cities and was advancing inland with relentless bombing raids on major cities like Chongqing and Kunming. The world was horrified by atrocities committed against civilians by the Japanese army in places like Nanking and Shanghai. It was clear that training pilots alone wouldn't be enough for Chennault. So in the fall of 1940, Chiang Kai-shek sent Chennault back to the United States to meet with Madame Chiang Kai-shek's brother, T.V. Soong, who also happened to be China's ambassador to the United States. Now, T.V. Soong was well connected in Washington to key leaders in the Roosevelt administration, men like Secretary of the Treasury Henry Morgenthau. It was through T.V. Soong's connections that they were able to secure loans and fighter planes for China. Perhaps more importantly, they got President Roosevelt to approve a secret plan that would allow American military pilots to resign from the military so they could volunteer for a new volunteer force called the American Volunteer Group, or AVG. This is important because in 1940, America was not yet at war and was officially neutral. This meant they couldn't send any of their military to actually fight in China. To get around this, President Roosevelt authorized the creation of a volunteer force made up of mostly former Navy, Marine, and Army Air Corps pilots. So in the summer of 1941, about 100 of these volunteers secretly sailed to Burma using fake passports. Their planes and equipment were also shipped to Burma because the Japanese by then controlled all of China's eastern seaports. It was in Burma that the men spent the rest of the year training, and preparing for war. Then, on December 7, 1941, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. 12 days later, on the morning of December 20th, Chennault was notified by the Chinese Air Force that 10 Japanese bombers were approaching their base in the city of Kuming in southern China. The Japanese have been bombing the city of Kuming on a regular basis with little or no resistance. But on that day, the Japanese Air Force was in for a surprise as the AVG scrambled to intercept them. These planes, painted with fierce-looking shark jaws, came out of nowhere and shot down 4 of the Japanese bombers before the remaining bombers retreated back to their base. The Japanese never attacked Kuming again as long as the AVG was based there. After the Battle of Kuming, the men of the AVG instantly became heroes both in China and in the United States. It was after this battle that the Chinese started calling them Feihu, or the Flying Tigers. Over the next 7 months, the Flying Tigers would go on to shoot down nearly 300 Japanese planes over the skies of southern China, Burma, Thailand, and Vietnam before these volunteers were merged into the regular Army Air Corps in July of 1942. Even though the Flying Tigers fought together for just 7 months, they must never be forgotten for 2 important reasons. First, the Flying Tigers were a tremendous morale booster for both the people of China and the United States. We may take it for granted today when we look back that the United States and China were somehow destined to defeat Japan in World War II. But things looked very bleak in 1941 and 42. Japan had struck a blow at Pearl Harbor. They controlled all of eastern China, and they were on the march inwards into China as well as in South Asia and the South Pacific. There were no signs that the Japanese war machine could be stopped anytime soon. But the Flying Tigers showed that the Allies could fight back. They demonstrated courage in the face of overwhelming odds. They gave both the people of China and the United States the morale boost and confidence that they desperately needed to fight the Empire of Japan. The second reason the Flying Tigers should never be forgotten is because of the shining example they still provide of American and Chinese friendship and partnership. The last couple of years have been tense ones when it comes to U.S.-China relations. A young person growing up today may think that the U.S. and China have always had an adversarial relationship. But the story of the Flying Tigers is an important reminder that the people of China and the United States once came together for a very important and noble purpose. This was a partnership both at the highest levels of government to the individual pilots, ground crews, and Chinese allies on the ground. The American Flying Tiger pilots may have received most of the glory, but they could not have succeeded and survived were not for the brave Chinese on the ground who built and repaired the airfields on the ground, who gave warning when enemy planes were approaching, and who risked their lives by rescuing Flying Tigers when they were shot down to make sure that they could fly again. One of the Chinese speakers at the ceremony I attended over the weekend remarked that the Chinese and Americans weren't so much driven by what they hated in front of them, but by what they loved behind them. A reminder that love can bring people together much better than hate. If you're looking for a good book about the Flying Tigers, I found a couple of good ones. One is The Flying Tigers, the untold story of the American pilots who waged a secret war against Japan, by Sam Kleiner. The other one is about 100 pages longer and more detailed, and it's simply called Flying Tigers by Daniel Ford. I hope that by studying the epic story of the Flying Tigers, you too can gain a better appreciation of how things used to be and how things could still be between the people of two great countries. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And don't forget to click subscribe for more videos like this one. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.